March 20th, 2005, route Irish, Iraq. The desert air shimmers with heat as a convoy of Humvees and MRAPs rumbles through the dust. Inside the vehicles, soldiers scan the horizon. Letters from home tucked in breast pockets, dog tags clinking against body armor, radio chatter crackles, routine security reports. Nothing unusual. Commanders expected scattered resistance, perhaps a single improvised explosive device. Intelligence reports suggested minimal insurgent activity for the sector. But within minutes, over 40 insurgents would unleash a coordinated ambush that would test every assumption about convoy security and combat roles. The firefight that followed would last 25 minutes and produce 27 enemy casualties. More significantly, it would result in the first Silver Star awarded to a woman since World War II for direct combat action. This is the story of how one sergeant's decision changed military history forever. March 20th, 2005, route Irish stretched 11 kilometers between Baghdad International Airport and the Green Zone. American soldiers called it the most dangerous road in Iraq. The sun beat down mercilessly as Supply Convoy 27 began its routine run. 30 soldiers rode in 8 vehicles, 6 Humvees, and 2 supply trucks. Their mission, deliver essential supplies to Forward Operating Base Falcon. The convoy belonged to the 617th Military Police Company, a National Guard unit from Richmond, Kentucky. They provided security for logistics operations, a critical but unglamorous task. Each soldier knew the statistics. In the previous 60 days, coalition forces had discovered 32 improvised explosive devices along Route Irish. Intelligence reports documented an average of 1 attack every 72 hours. Staff Sergeant Timothy Nain commanded the convoy. A veteran with multiple deployments, he understood the mathematics of survival. Move fast, maintain spacing, watch for disturbances in the road surface. His radio operator monitored 3 frequencies simultaneously, listening for warnings from other units. The lead vehicle carried a jammer designed to disrupt remote detonation signals. Behind them, Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester's squad provided rear security in 2 Humvees. The convoy maintained 40 kilometers per hour, balancing speed against control. Too fast, and a driver might miss an IED. Too slow, and insurgents had time to prepare an attack. Dust clouds marked their progress, visible for kilometers. There was no element of surprise on Route Irish. Everyone knew the Americans were coming. According to military doctrine, convoys should receive aerial reconnaissance before movement, but helicopter assets were stretched thin across Baghdad. Supply Convoy 27 moved without overhead coverage. They relied on ground intelligence, radio reports, and the experience of soldiers who had driven this road dozens of times. The temperature inside the armored Humvees exceeded 43 degrees Celsius. Soldiers wore full-body armor, protective plates front and back, Kevlar helmets, eye protection. Each carried an M16 rifle, 210 rounds of ammunition, and 4 fragmentation grenades. At kilometer marker 8, the road curved east around a cluster of buildings. Palm groves lined both sides, providing cover within 50 meters of the highway. Intelligence had flagged this sector as a potential ambush site 3 months earlier, but every kilometer of Route Irish qualified as a potential ambush site. The convoy approached the curve at 1300 hours local time. Radio traffic remained routine, no warnings, no alerts. Staff Sergeant Nain checked his mirrors, confirming that all vehicles maintained proper spacing. In the rear security vehicle, Sergeant Hester scanned the palm groves through binoculars. She saw nothing unusual. The road ahead appeared empty. Within seconds, everything would change. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester was 23 years old. She had enlisted in the Army National Guard in April 2001, 4 months before the September 11th attacks. Her military occupational specialty, 31 Bravo Military Police. By March 2005, she had spent 14 months in Iraq conducting convoy security operations along the most dangerous highways in the country. Hester grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky. In high school, she played softball and considered joining the military for college funding. The National Guard offered education benefits and the promise of weekend training. She never imagined deploying to a war zone for over a year. But after the invasion of Iraq in March 2003, National Guard units received orders for extended overseas deployments. The 617th Military Police Company mobilized in January 2004. Military police units traditionally performed law enforcement and security duties. They guarded bases, conducted traffic control, and detained prisoners. Combat was not their primary mission, but in Iraq there were no front lines. Insurgents attacked logistics convoys, ambushed patrols, and planted improvised explosive devices on every major highway. Military police found themselves in firefights as intense as any infantry engagement. Hester's squad consisted of 5 soldiers. She served as squad leader, responsible for tactical decisions and crew coordination. Her vehicle mounted an M240 Bravo machine gun capable of firing 800 rounds per minute. The gunner, Specialist Jason Mike, stood in the turret scanning for threats. Private First Class William Haynes drove. Specialist Casey Cooper served as radio operator. Staff Sergeant Timothy Nine, the convoy commander, rode in the lead security vehicle ahead of the supply trucks. In the 14 months since deployment, Hester had participated in over 200 convoy missions. She had witnessed improvised explosive device detonations, responded to ambushes, and provided security during combat operations. Her personnel file documented steady performance under pressure. Her platoon sergeant noted in a December 2004 evaluation, demonstrates exceptional tactical awareness and leadership ability in high-stress situations. The military in 2005 remained predominantly male, especially in combat-related positions. Women served in support roles, medical units, and military police. Official policy prohibited women from serving in direct ground combat units, infantry, armor, and special operations. But in Iraq, the distinction between combat and support blurred. Female soldiers encountered the same dangers as their male counterparts. They conducted patrols, returned fire, and defended their positions. Policy lagged behind reality. Hester's presence in the rear security position was routine. Her squad had performed this mission repeatedly. As the convoy approached kilometer marker 8 on March 20, 2005, she maintained standard vigilance. Nothing suggested the next 25 minutes would be different from hundreds of previous patrols. She did not know she was about to make history. 43 insurgents prepared their positions 300 meters from Route Irish. They had selected the ambush site carefully. The curve in the road forced convoys to slow down. Palm groves provided concealment within effective weapons range. A small village nearby offered escape routes and civilian cover. The insurgents had spent 2 days preparing fighting positions, pre-positioning ammunition, and identifying escape paths. Their arsenal included 14 AK-47 assault rifles, 6 rocket-propelled grenade launchers with 23 rockets, 3 PKM machine guns, and 5 improvised explosive devices. The IEDs were buried in the road surface at the curve, connected to a command wire running to a concealed firing position. When the convoy reached the kill zone, a single button press would detonate all 5 devices simultaneously. The insurgent commander was a former Iraqi army officer. He understood military tactics and had studied American convoy procedures. His plan exploited known vulnerabilities. First, the IEDs would disable the lead vehicles, stopping the convoy. Second, RPG teams would engage the middle vehicles, destroying supply trucks and creating chaos. Third, small arms teams would suppress return fire while the RPG gunners reloaded. Fourth, insurgents would withdraw before coalition reinforcements arrived. According to captured documents recovered after the battle, the insurgents expected to destroy 3 to 5 vehicles, inflict 15 to 20 casualties, and complete the ambush within 10 minutes. Intelligence reports indicated convoy escorts typically numbered 8 to 12 soldiers. The insurgents possessed a 4-to-1 numerical advantage. Their plan had worked successfully 3 times in the previous 6 months against similar convoys. But their intelligence was incomplete. They did not know that Supply Convoy 27 traveled with 2 military police security squads instead of 1. They did not know that Sergeant Hester's vehicle carried an M240 machine gun. Most significantly, they did not anticipate an aggressive counterattack. At 1305 hours, the lead Humvee reached the curve. Staff Sergeant Nine observed the palm groves on both sides, noting the density of vegetation. His driver maintained steady speed. The road surface appeared undisturbed. Radio traffic remained normal. 3 seconds later, the world exploded. 5 IEDs detonated simultaneously. The blast wave struck the lead and second vehicles, shattering windows and shredding tires. Shrapnel tore through metal panels. The lead Humvee swerved, its driver momentarily blinded by dust and smoke. The second vehicle stopped dead, its front axle destroyed. Behind them, the supply convoy began emergency evasive procedures. Then the RPGs started flying. The ambush began at 1305 hours and 12 seconds. 14 rocket-propelled grenades launched within the first minute. 3 struck vehicles. The first hit the disabled second Humvee, penetrating the rear door and detonating inside the cargo compartment. The explosion killed 1 soldier instantly, Specialist Ashley Pullen, age 21, from St. Louis, Missouri. 2 others sustained shrapnel wounds. Staff Sergeant Nine's radio erupted with overlapping transmissions. "Contact front! IED detonation! RPGs inbound!" He grabbed the handset, forcing calm into his voice. "All stations return fire, rear security, provide suppressive fire, and maneuver to support." His training took over. assess, communicate, act. The convoy was stopped in the kill zone. They needed to move or counterattack. Sitting still meant death. In the rear security vehicle, Sergeant Hester felt the shockwave from the initial IED blast. She saw smoke billowing from the front of the convoy. Then she saw the insurgent positions. Muzzle flashes erupted from the palm grove on the right side of the road. RPG backblasts marked launcher positions. She counted at least 6 separate firing points within 200 meters. "Contact right!" she shouted into the intercom. "Haynes, move us forward 30 meters and pull right. Mike, engage that tree line. Cooper, get battalion on the horn. We need air support now." Specialist Jason Mike swung the M240 machine gun toward the palm grove. He pressed the butterfly trigger. The weapon roared, sending 7.62mm rounds downrange at 800 rounds per minute. Tracers arced into the vegetation. Return fire immediately intensified. AK-47 bullets snapped past the vehicle, pinging off armor plates. An RPG whooshed overhead, missing by 3 meters. Private Haynes accelerated forward, pulling the Humvee off the road to the right. The vehicle bounced over rough ground, closing the distance to the insurgent positions. Hester made a split-second tactical calculation. Standard doctrine called for establishing a support-by-fire position and waiting for reinforcements. But the convoy was trapped. Soldiers were wounded. Continuing to take fire from protected positions would result in more casualties. The insurgents expected the Americans to hunker down and call for help. Hester decided to attack. "9, this is Hester," she transmitted. "We're assaulting the right flank. Need you to suppress the left side." 3 seconds of silence. Then 9's voice. "Roger, moving to support." The decision violated conventional military police tactics, but Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester understood something fundamental about combat. Momentum matters more than doctrine. Hester's vehicle raced across the desert scrub toward the palm grove. Behind her, Staff Sergeant 9's team moved to establish a support position. Specialist Mike continued firing the M240 in controlled bursts, suppressing insurgent positions. Hester grabbed her M16 with the M203 grenade launcher attachment. She had 28 rounds in her magazine and 4 40mm grenades. "Haynes, stop at that berm. Mike, keep them pinned. Cooper, you're with me." The Humvee skidded to a halt behind a small rise in the terrain, providing partial cover. Hester and Cooper dismounted, moving immediately to covered positions. The palm grove was 80 meters away. Muzzle flashes continued to erupt from multiple locations. An RPG screamed overhead, detonating 50 meters behind them. Hester raised her M203, aimed at a cluster of palms where she had seen an RPG launch, and fired. The 40mm grenade arced through the air and exploded in the tree line. She immediately reloaded, shifted her aim, and fired again. Cooper opened up with his M16, sending 3-round bursts into the vegetation. From her position, Hester could see the entire battlefield. The convoy was stopped on the road, 2 vehicles disabled. Staff Sergeant 9's team had established a firing line, engaging insurgents on the left side. But the main threat came from the right flank, the palm grove where most of the RPG teams were positioned. If those teams weren't neutralized, they would continue destroying vehicles. Hester made another tactical decision. "Cooper, we're moving forward. Bounding overwatch. I move, you cover. Then you move, I cover. We're taking that tree line." Cooper looked at her for half a second. Then he nodded. "Roger, Sergeant." Military textbooks describe bounding overwatch as a technique where one element advances while another provides covering fire. It's designed for infantry platoons with 20 to 30 soldiers. Hester and Cooper were 2 people attempting to assault a fortified position held by at least 15 insurgents. The mathematics should have been impossible, but the insurgents had not anticipated an immediate ground assault. They expected the Americans to maintain defensive positions and call for air support, a tactic that typically took 15 to 20 minutes to coordinate. Hester's aggressive movement caught them by surprise. She sprinted forward 20 meters and dropped behind a small depression in the ground. Cooper fired continuously, keeping insurgent heads down. Then Cooper moved while Hester provided covering fire. They repeated the maneuver 3 times, closing to within 40 meters of the palm grove. An insurgent stepped from behind a tree, raising an RPG launcher. Hester saw him, aimed, and fired a 3-round burst. The insurgent dropped. She kept moving. At 1312 hours, 7 minutes into the firefight, the tactical situation remained precarious. The convoy had sustained 1 killed and 4 wounded. 2 vehicles were non-operational. Insurgent fire continued from multiple positions, but Hester's counterattack had disrupted the enemy's plan. Instead of systematically destroying a stopped convoy, insurgents were now defending against an assault from an unexpected direction. Staff Sergeant 9 coordinated the overall defense. His vehicle's M240 machine gun engaged targets on the left flank. Other convoy soldiers had dismounted and established firing positions using the disabled vehicles for cover. 9 monitored 3 radio nets simultaneously, internal convoy communications, battalion command frequency, and air support coordination. Specialist Cooper had requested helicopter support at 1306 hours. Coalition air assets operated from bases throughout Baghdad, but response times varied. On March 20, 2005, an AH-64 Apache helicopter from the 1st Battalion, 10th Aviation Regiment, was conducting a routine patrol 12 kilometers from Route Irish when the call came through. Chief Warrant Officer 3 Marcus Wilson piloted the Apache. His co-pilot and gunner, Chief Warrant Officer 2 Sarah Bennett, operated the weapons systems. They received the grid coordinates for the ambush site and diverted immediately. Flight time, 4 minutes. At 1316 hours, Wilson brought the Apache into a holding pattern 800 meters from the firefight. Through the helicopter's targeting system, Bennett could see the entire battlefield. She identified 2 clusters of insurgent positions, one in the palm grove where Hester was engaged, another in buildings on the opposite side of the road. She armed the 30mm M230 chain gun. Ground element, this is Apache 1-6. We have visual on your position. Ready to engage on your command. Hester heard the transmission through Cooper's radio. She was 30 meters from the first line of palm trees, pinned down by machine gun fire from 2 positions. Apache 1-6, engage targets in the palm grove, east side. We are 40 meters south of the tree line. Danger close. Danger close. The term meant friendly forces were within 600 meters of the target, close enough that the helicopter's weapons could hit both enemy and friendly positions. Bennett adjusted her aim, compensating for the proximity of American soldiers. The Apache's 30mm cannon fired 650 rounds per minute. Each round weighed approximately 300 grams and could penetrate light armor. Bennett fired a 3-second burst into the palm grove. 50 rounds tore through the vegetation. Trees splintered, dirt erupted. 2 insurgent fighting positions ceased firing. The psychological effect was immediate. The remaining insurgents, who had been maintaining organized defensive fire, began withdrawing. The appearance of attack helicopters typically signaled the end of any insurgent ambush. Those who stayed died. Those who ran had a chance to fight another day. Hester saw the withdrawal begin. "Cooper, they're pulling back. Let's move." 1319 hours. The firefight had lasted 14 minutes. Hester and Cooper advanced into the palm grove, moving cautiously between trees. Spent shell casings littered the ground. Blood trails marked where wounded insurgents had been dragged away. The smell of explosives and burning vegetation hung in the air. They found 3 insurgent fighting positions within 50 meters of each other. Each position consisted of a shallow trench, sandbags for protection, and stockpiled ammunition. One position contained an RPG launcher and 6 unused rockets. Another held a PKM machine gun and 4 ammunition cans, approximately 800 rounds. The insurgents had prepared for a sustained engagement. Hester radioed her position. 9, we've secured the primary firing positions. Insurgents are withdrawing northeast. Count 3 enemy KIA in the grove. Roger, Hester, hold position. Apache is tracking runners. From her vantage point in the palm grove, Hester could see the road and the disabled convoy vehicles. Medics were treating wounded soldiers. Other troops maintained security, scanning for secondary attacks. The immediate threat had passed, but the mission wasn't complete until the convoy reached its destination or received recovery vehicles for the damaged Humvees. At 1324 hours, the Apache helicopter reported engaging a group of insurgents attempting to flee in 2 vehicles. The helicopter fired Hellfire missiles, destroying both vehicles. Final enemy casualty count, confirmed through post-action intelligence: 27 insurgents killed, 6 captured wounded, 10 escaped. Coalition casualties: 1 killed, 4 wounded. The statistical exchange ratio, 27-1, reflected the technological and tactical advantages of coalition forces, but statistics don't capture the chaos of combat, the split-second decisions, or the courage required to assault a fortified position. Numbers can't measure the impact of leadership under fire. By 1330 hours, 25 minutes after the ambush began, the firefight was over. Recovery vehicles were en route. Hester's squad maintained security while medics continued treating wounded. Specialist Ashley Pullen's body was prepared for transport. Every fallen soldier returned home. That was the promise. Hester reloaded her weapons and checked her squad's ammunition count. They had expended approximately 800 rounds of machine gun ammunition, 150 rifle rounds, and 4 grenades. Standard procedure required after-action reports, weapons maintenance, and tactical debriefing. The convoy would remain at the ambush site for another 2 hours while engineers cleared unexploded ordnance and recovery teams extracted the damaged vehicles. Hester didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, thirsty, and sad about Specialist Pullen. The decision to counterattack had been tactical, not heroic, a calculated response to an immediate threat. She had simply done what her training and instincts demanded. She had no idea that her actions would be analyzed, discussed, and celebrated for years to come. The after-action review began 3 hours after the firefight ended. Staff Sergeant 9 compiled initial reports from all squad leaders. Every combat engagement required detailed documentation, timelines, ammunition expenditures, equipment damage, enemy casualties, and tactical lessons. These reports flowed up the chain of command, eventually reaching battalion and brigade headquarters. 9's preliminary report noted several significant tactical elements. First, the ambush was well coordinated, suggesting experienced insurgent leadership. Second, the aggressive counterattack by Hester's squad had disrupted the enemy's plan. Third, the integration of ground forces and attack helicopter support demonstrated effective combined arms operations. Fourth, the casualty ratio, 27 insurgent fatalities versus 1 coalition death and 4 wounded, indicated superior training and equipment. The report specifically highlighted Sergeant Hester's actions. 9 wrote, Sergeant Hester demonstrated exceptional leadership and tactical initiative. Under heavy enemy fire, she directed her squad in a flanking maneuver that neutralized the primary threat. Her decision to assault enemy positions, while tactically risky, prevented additional coalition casualties and led to the successful defeat of a numerically superior force. Battalion commanders reviewed the report within 24 hours. Brigade staff officers examined it within 48 hours. By March 25, 2005, 5 days after the ambush, higher-level commanders at Multinational Corps Iraq headquarters had analyzed the engagement, the tactical decision-making, the integration of air and ground assets, and the aggressive counterattack drew particular attention. Combat awards in the U.S. military follow established criteria. The Silver Star ranks as the third highest decoration for valor, behind only the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross. It requires gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. The official definition specifies acts of valor that distinguish the recipient from peers, but don't meet the higher threshold required for the Distinguished Service Cross. Hester's actions clearly met the criteria. She had led an assault against fortified positions under direct fire. Her tactical decisions had been sound. Her personal courage had been evident. The results, neutralizing the threat and preventing additional friendly casualties, were documented. But one element made the award unusual. Hester was female. In March 2005, official U.S. military policy prohibited women from serving in direct ground combat units. Women could not join infantry, armor, or special operations forces, yet they could serve in military police, aviation, and support roles that placed them in combat situations. The policy distinguished between assignment to combat units and exposure to combat. It was a distinction without a practical difference in Iraq, where there were no front lines. No woman had received the Silver Star for close-quarters combat since World War II. The last female Silver Star recipient, Lieutenant Mary Jane Chills, received the award in 1945 for her service as a flight nurse under enemy fire. That was 60 years earlier. The recommendation for Hester's Silver Star was submitted on April 7, 2005. It included sworn statements from witnesses, photographic evidence of the ambush site, and detailed tactical analysis. The approval process typically took 2 to 4 months. June 16, 2005. Camp Liberty, Iraq, temperature 46 degrees Celsius. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester stood at attention in front of 200 soldiers, officers, and journalists. Behind her, an American flag hung motionless in the still desert air. To her right stood Staff Sergeant Timothy 9 and Specialist Jason Mike, who would also receive Silver Stars for their actions during the Route Irish ambush. 2 other squad members would receive Bronze Stars. Major General James Thurman, commanding officer of Multinational Division Baghdad, read the citation, "For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom on March 20, 2005. Sergeant Hester's bravery and leadership during a complex attack by anti-Iraqi forces demonstrated extraordinary courage under the most dangerous combat conditions. Her actions directly contributed to the defeat of the enemy and the survival of members of her convoy." The general pinned the silver star to Hester's uniform. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Military protocol required Hester to remain expressionless, standing at attention. But inside, she processed the magnitude of the moment. She was 23 years old, from Bowling Green, Kentucky, holding a decoration earned in close-quarters combat. She was the first woman to receive the Silver Star since World War II, the first woman ever to receive it for direct participation in offensive combat operations. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Afterward, Hester faced a media scrum. Reporters asked predictable questions. How does it feel? Were you scared? What do you want to say to young women considering military service? She answered diplomatically, deflecting attention from herself to her squad and the soldiers who fought alongside her. But the questions revealed a deeper cultural tension. In June 2005, American society was still debating women's roles in combat. Official policy prohibited female soldiers from serving in infantry, armor, and special forces. Yet women in military, police, aviation, and support roles routinely engaged in firefights. They drove convoys through ambush zones, they operated crew-served weapons, they kicked indoors during raids. The policy said one thing, reality demonstrated another. Hester's Silver Star forced the debate into the open. Conservative commentators argued that women lacked the physical strength and psychological temperament for direct combat. Progressive voices countered that women like Hester had already proven their capability under fire. Military officials took carefully worded positions, acknowledging women's contributions while maintaining existing policy restrictions. The statistics told a clear story. By June 2005, approximately 15,000 women were deployed to Iraq. They constituted roughly 10% of coalition forces. 130 women had been wounded in action. 11 had been killed. They served in every area of operations except officially designated direct ground combat units, a distinction that meant little on roads like Route Irish, where every convoy faced the same threats. Hester's award ceremony concluded at 1130 hours. By noon, photographs had been transmitted to news organizations worldwide. By evening, her image appeared on television news broadcasts across America. The story resonated because it challenged assumptions, confronted policy contradictions, and personalized an abstract debate. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester had become a symbol whether she wanted to be or not. The debate intensified through summer and fall of 2005. Military journals published tactical analyses of the Route Irish ambush. Women's advocacy organizations cited Hester's Silver Star as evidence that combat restrictions should be eliminated. Congressional representatives asked Pentagon officials to justify policies that seemed disconnected from combat realities. The arguments followed predictable patterns. Supporters of maintaining restrictions pointed to physical strength requirements, unit cohesion concerns, and potential risks of female soldiers being captured. They argued that exceptions like Hester didn't invalidate general policy. Opponents countered that physical standards should apply to individuals regardless of gender, that unit cohesion depended on training and leadership rather than gender composition, and that male soldiers also faced capture risks. Lost in the debate was a fundamental truth. Military necessity had already outpaced policy. By 2005, the U.S. military faced personnel shortages and an insurgency that attacked everyone. Commanders needed every capable soldier. Gender became secondary to competence. Statistical analysis supported this reality. Studies conducted by the Army Research Institute examined mixed-gender military police units deployed to Iraq. The research found no significant differences in unit performance based on gender composition. Units with higher percentages of female soldiers performed comparably to all male units when conducting convoy security, checkpoint operations, and patrol missions. The determining factors were training, leadership, and experience, not gender, but policy change moved slowly. The Department of Defense maintained its position through 2005, 2006, and into 2007. Women could not officially serve in infantry, armor, or special forces units, yet they continued to fight, return fire, and earn combat decorations. Other female soldiers received recognition for valor in subsequent years. Staff Sergeant Amy Kruger received the Bronze Star with Valor device for actions during a similar ambush. Specialist Monica Brown earned the Silver Star in 2008 for exposing herself to enemy fire while treating wounded soldiers in Afghanistan. These awards accumulated, creating a documentary record of women's combat performance. Meanwhile, Hester completed her deployment and returned to Kentucky. She transferred from the National Guard to the regular Army, continuing her military career. She gave speeches at military academies and leadership conferences. Journalists periodically contacted her for anniversary stories about the Route Irish ambush. She answered politely, always redirecting credit to her squad members and emphasizing that she had simply done her job. The policy restricting women from ground combat remained in place for 8 more years. Change required sustained pressure from multiple directions: combat veterans testifying before Congress, academic research documenting women's capabilities, military leaders acknowledging operational necessity, and legal challenges arguing that the policy constituted discrimination. On January 24, 2013, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta announced the elimination of the combat exclusion policy. "Not everyone is going to be able to be a combat soldier," Panetta told reporters, "but everyone is entitled to a chance." The policy change opened approximately 237,000 military positions to women, including infantry, armor, and special operations roles. The services had until January 1, 2016, to implement the changes and develop gender-neutral physical standards. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester's Silver Star, awarded June 16, 2005, stood as a historical marker on the path to that policy change. Her 25 minutes of combat en route Irish didn't single-handedly change military policy, but it provided undeniable evidence that women could perform under the most demanding combat conditions. Beyond the policy debates and recognition ceremonies, the Route Irish ambush carried permanent consequences for those who experienced it. Specialist Ashley Pullen, killed in the opening seconds of the firefight, left behind parents, siblings, and friends. Her funeral took place in St. Louis, Missouri, with full military honors. 7 members of her squad attended, including Sergeant Hester. They stood in their dress uniforms, saluting as Pullen's flag-draped coffin was carried to its final resting place. The 4 soldiers wounded in the ambush spent weeks recovering. 2 returned to duty within months. 1 required medical evacuation to Germany for treatment of blast injuries. The 4th received a medical discharge, his injuries too severe for continued military service. Combat produces these outcomes. Some soldiers return, some don't. Staff Sergeant Timothy Neen, who coordinated the overall defense and earned his own Silver Star, continued serving in the military. He retired in 2012 after 22 years of service. In later interviews, he consistently praised Hester's tactical decisions and emphasized that the successful defense resulted from teamwork rather than individual heroics. Specialist Jason Mike, who operated the M240 machine gun during the counterattack, completed his enlistment and left the military in 2007. He returned to civilian life, occasionally speaking about his combat experiences, but generally maintaining privacy. The insurgents who conducted the ambush came from multiple backgrounds. Some were former Iraqi army soldiers, trained by the Hussein regime and possessing genuine military skills. Others were foreign fighters who had entered Iraq after the 2003 invasion. Still others were local residents motivated by ideology, nationalism, or anger at foreign occupation. Intelligence reports indicated that the commander of the March 20th ambush was killed during the firefight. 6 wounded insurgents were captured and provided tactical information about the attack planning. The broader conflict continued. Route Irish remained dangerous throughout 2005, 2006, and 2007. Insurgent tactics evolved. IEDs became more sophisticated, using multiple pressure plates and advanced detonation methods. Ambush techniques adapted to counter-coalition countermeasures. The mathematical progression of conflict continued: action, reaction, counter-reaction. American casualties in Iraq totaled 4,503 deaths by the time combat operations officially ended in December 2011. Approximately 32,000 soldiers sustained wounds requiring medical evacuation. These numbers represented individual stories: soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen who deployed, fought, and sometimes didn't return. The 617th Military Police Company completed its deployment in February 2006. The unit returned to Kentucky, where it demobilized and soldiers resumed civilian lives. Some continued serving in the National Guard. Others transitioned completely to civilian careers. All carried memories of deployment, some neutral, some positive, some traumatic. Hester herself struggled with aspects of readjustment. She told interviewers years later about difficulty sleeping, hypervigilance in public spaces, and the challenge of explaining combat experiences to people who had never served. These were common responses among combat veterans. The psychological impact of war extended beyond physical injuries. But Hester also emphasized positive outcomes. She valued the camaraderie developed during deployment, the confidence gained from overcoming extreme challenges, and the satisfaction of having performed competently under impossible conditions. War contained multitudes: horror and pride, loss and achievement, trauma and growth. On March 20, 2015, 10 years after the ambush, Hester participated in a commemorative ceremony at the National Infantry Museum in Columbus, Georgia. She spoke briefly about the firefight, honored Ashley Pullen's memory, and encouraged young soldiers to train seriously and lead courageously. Her remarks lasted 4 minutes. She did not dramatize or embellish. She simply described what happened and why it mattered. That restraint characterized her approach to recognition. She accepted the Silver Star because it honored her squad's collective efforts. She participated in ceremonies because military protocol required it. But she never sought celebrity or claimed special status. She had done her job under difficult circumstances. That was enough. The path from Hester's Silver Star in June 2005 to the full integration of women in combat roles required 8 years. That timeline reflected institutional resistance, legitimate concerns about implementation, and the complexity of changing deeply rooted military culture. Between 2005 and 2013, evidence accumulated. Multiple studies examined physical performance standards, researchers analyzed injury rates in mixed-gender units, commanders submitted reports on unit effectiveness. The data overwhelmingly supported one conclusion: properly trained soldiers could perform combat roles regardless of gender. Physical standards should be rigorous and applied uniformly, but gender itself was not a disqualifying factor. The January 2013 policy change opened theoretical possibilities, but implementation required practical changes. Each service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, developed gender-neutral physical standards for combat specialties. Infantry training courses were open to women, Rangers, Special Forces, and other elite units began accepting female candidates. The first woman graduated from Army Ranger School in August 2015. Captain Kristen Grist and First Lieutenant Shay Haver completed the 61-day course, demonstrating that women could meet the Army's most demanding training standards. In December 2015, the Department of Defense announced that all combat roles would open to women without exception, eliminating remaining restrictions. By 2017, women served in every military occupational specialty. Female infantry officers led platoons, female soldiers joined armor units, female Marines conducted combat operations. The transition, predicted by some critics to cause unit cohesion problems, occurred without major incidents. Commanders focused on maintaining standards rather than debating gender. Statistics documented the change. By 2020, approximately 18% of active duty military personnel were women. They held positions ranging from infantry rifleman to fighter pilot to submarine officer. The military became more representative of the society it served. Hester herself provided perspective on these changes. In a 2017 interview, she noted, "I didn't set out to change policy. I responded to a tactical situation based on training and instinct. If my actions contributed to broader changes, that's meaningful. But the real story is about capability, not gender. Soldiers should be evaluated on performance, not assumptions." Her measured response reflected military professionalism. The debate about women in combat had often been emotional, driven by ideology rather than evidence. Hester consistently redirected attention to facts. Mission requirements, training standards, demonstrated capabilities. Other female veterans echoed similar themes. They didn't want special recognition for being women in combat. They wanted recognition for being soldiers who performed competently. The distinction mattered. Competence transcended gender. By 2025, 20 years after the Root Irish ambush, Hester's Silver Star occupied historical context rather than contemporary controversy. New generations of soldiers, both male and female, trained together, deployed together, and fought together. The idea that women couldn't serve in combat seemed quaint, disconnected from reality. Military museums displayed Hester's uniform and Silver Star citation alongside other combat decorations. Military academies used the Root Irish ambush as a tactical case study in leadership and aggressive defense. The story had transitioned from current event to historical lesson, but some elements remained constant. Combat still required courage. Leadership still demanded quick decisions under pressure. Success still depended on training, discipline, and teamwork. Gender was one variable among many, less important than competence, less significant than character. The military had learned a lesson that extended beyond gender. Rigid policies that conflicted with operational necessity eventually collapsed under the weight of reality. Better to adapt policies to match reality than to maintain fictions that everyone knew were false. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester's 25-minute firefight on March 20, 2005 demonstrated this truth with undeniable clarity. She led soldiers in combat. She made sound tactical decisions. She defeated a numerically superior enemy. These facts existed independent of gender. They spoke for themselves. March 20, 2025, 20 years after the Root Irish ambush, Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester, now 43 years old and retired from military service, returned to Fort Knox, Kentucky, where she spoke to a class of military police students. She stood before 120 soldiers, roughly half women, and described the firefight that earned her the Silver Star. She began with the tactical situation. We were conducting routine convoy security on Route Irish, one of the most dangerous roads in Iraq. The ambush was well planned and coordinated. We faced approximately 40 insurgents with superior numbers and prepared positions. She described the decision-making process. When the ambush began, we had choices. We could establish defensive positions and wait for reinforcements. That was doctrine. But the convoy was stopped, vehicles were damaged, and soldiers were wounded. Defensive posture meant accepting continued casualties. So we attacked, she explained the execution. My squad assaulted the primary enemy positions while other elements provided supporting fire. We used standard bounding overwatch techniques, moving under covering fire. The key was speed and aggression. We disrupted their plan before they could fully implement it, she concluded with lessons. Leadership requires making decisions with incomplete information under extreme pressure. Training prepares you for tactical execution, but combat demands adaptability. Trust your team, apply your training, and commit to your decisions. That's what we did on March 20th, 2005. The students asked questions. Hester answered without embellishment. She didn't dramatize or glorify combat. She described it as a job requiring specific skills, performed under difficult conditions. Some students asked about being a woman in combat. Hester's response was consistent with 20 years of similar questions. Gender wasn't relevant during the firefight. The insurgents didn't care whether we were male or female. They wanted to kill us. We wanted to stop them. Everything else was background noise. Focus on being a competent soldier. Master your craft. Lead effectively. That's what matters. After the presentation, Hester visited the memorial wall at the 617th Military Police Company headquarters in Richmond. She stood before Specialist Ashley Pullen's name, engraved in bronze among other fallen soldiers. 20 years had passed, but the loss remained real. Pullen was 21 when she died. She never got to experience the policy changes her death helped precipitate. War produces these outcomes. Some soldiers return, some don't. The ones who return carry memories of those who didn't. That burden never disappears, though time makes it more bearable. Hester touched the bronze plaque briefly, then stepped back. Military protocol required no particular gesture at memorial walls. Soldiers stood respectfully, paid their tribute silently, and moved on. The memorial remained, the names endured, memory persisted, statistics documented the broader story. Between 2003 and 2011, 179 female service members died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Over 1,000 sustained wounds requiring medical evacuation. They served as medics, pilots, military police, intelligence specialists, and in numerous other roles. After 2013, women also served in infantry, armor, and special operations. The numbers would continue accumulating. But statistics don't capture individual experiences. They don't describe the sound of incoming rounds, the smell of burning vehicles, or the weight of making life or death decisions in seconds. They don't convey the bonds formed under shared danger or the permanent impact of combat on those who survive it. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester's Silver Star, earned March 20th, 2005, represented one soldier's actions during 25 minutes of combat. But it also represented something larger, a turning point in military policy, evidence of women's combat capabilities, and a challenge to assumptions about gender and war. 20 years later, that larger significance had been absorbed into institutional memory. Women served in all military roles. The debate had ended. Reality had prevailed. Hester left the memorial and returned to her civilian life. She had a family, a career, and responsibilities that had nothing to do with Iraq or combat decorations. The Silver Star remained in a box at home, occasionally displayed for school presentations or veteran events, but mostly stored away. War was part of her past. It shaped her, changed her, and gave her experiences that would resonate throughout her life. But it didn't define her completely. She was more than a decorated soldier. She was a person who had faced extreme circumstances and responded with courage and competence. That was the real story, not gender politics or policy debates, but human beings confronting extraordinary challenges and discovering reserves of strength they didn't know they possessed. The convoy en route Irish, March 20th, 2005. The ambush, the counterattack, the firefight. These events lasted 25 minutes but echoed across 20 years, influencing policy, inspiring soldiers, and demonstrating truths that transcended political arguments. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester stood at attention that day in 2005, accepting the Silver Star. She stands in memory as an example of leadership under fire, courage under pressure, and capability regardless of circumstance. The decoration honored her actions. History honors what those actions represented. 27 insurgents killed, 1 American soldier lost, 4 wounded. Numbers that tell part of the story, but not all of it. The full story lives in the memories of those who were there, in the memorial walls that bear the names of the fallen, and in the example set for future generations who will face their own tests of courage. War continues, soldiers continue to serve. Some will be tested as Hester was tested. They will make decisions under pressure, lead under fire, and discover what they're capable of becoming. The Route Irish ambush demonstrated that capability transcends assumptions. Training, leadership, courage, these qualities define effective soldiers regardless of any other characteristic. That lesson endures. It shapes policy, influences training, and reminds us that human potential exceeds our expectations when circumstances demand excellence. Specialist Ashley Pullen's name remains on the memorial wall. Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester's Silver Star remains in military history. The Firefight remains as a case study in tactical leadership. And the soldiers who stood en route Irish that March afternoon carry memories that time cannot erase, of dust and gunfire, fear and determination, loss and survival. 20 years later, the facts remain unchanged. The lessons remain relevant. The memory remains alive. This is history preserved through documentation, honored through remembrance, and transmitted through teaching. This is how we remember those who served, those who fought, and those who didn't come home. The convoy rolls forward, the mission continues, the story endures,